Nolte. Climate experts are 0 to 41 with their doomsday predictions. This article will have you believe that climate experts have only ever made 41 predictions about the future, and every single time they've been wrong. So I'm going to go through about half this list with you, and I'm going to point out every way in which it is utterly dishonest or outright lying. I say half because my sanity can only stretch so thin, but if by the end of it we still have people in the comments saying that Breitbart is right here, then I suppose we'll have to do a part 2. 1. 1967, dire famine forecast by 1975. So this first prediction is by Paul Ehrlich, who is not a climate scientist, and the prediction isn't about climate change. He is a professor in population studies, and the prediction is about overpopulation. This shouldn't be on the list, and they're using it as filler. 2. 1969, everyone will disappear in a cloud of blue steam by 1989. Stop me if this sounds repetitive, but this prediction is also by Paul Ehrlich, who is not a climate scientist, and the prediction is again about overpopulation, albeit with a passing focus on climate change, but he isn't a climate expert, so I don't know why we're using him. This shouldn't make the list once, let alone twice. So we're on number 3, but as you can tell, there are some things on this list that are better tackled together. So we're going to go over 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 12 all in one. That's because all of them relate to predictions about an ice age or global cooling, and also because 3 of them are led by the same guy, George J. Kukla, and while Stephen Schneider was included in number 5, he is used again in number 10 on his own. And I am willing to be charitable here. There are some scientists that got this wrong. A common problem was to overestimate the cooling effects of aerosols and to underestimate the heating effects of carbon dioxide. And if you look at that last prediction example they used, you can see that there wasn't scientific consensus around this at the time. Quote, a 1970 study of critical environmental problems concluded that the Rasool-Schneider kind of prediction was impossible to make yet. The area of greatest uncertainty, the study concludes, is our current lack of knowledge of the optical properties of man-made dust in scattering or absorbing. Yeah, the rest is impossible to read, but you get the point. It's not like there was a big scientific consensus around global cooling at the time. Actually, I can show that to you. I'm going to refer to this analysis of 68 studies between 1965 and 1979, a time period within which all these predictions fall. And to Breitbart's credit, there weren't just 6 studies that supported global cooling. There were 7. 19 were neutral and 42 supported global warming. So we can already see that during the time some scientists were making predictions about global cooling, the consensus was already that global warming would be our future. Alright, so let's get back to number 4. 1970, America subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980. And it's Paul Ehrlich again. He isn't a climate scientist, and this isn't a prediction about climate change. He is a professor of population studies, and this is a prediction about overpopulation. I think it's fair to say that if someone states their prediction more than once, that doesn't count as multiple wrong predictions. This shouldn't even count as 1, let alone 3. Number 9 is perhaps the most shocking to me. 1974, ozone depletion, a great peril to life. You would have to not know anything about this subject to use it as an example of scientists being unnecessarily alarmist. Ozone depletion was a massive problem. It was caused by chlorofluorocarbons, and then we banned those across the planet and stopped the problem in its tracks. Number 11, 1980. Acid rain kills life in lakes. Now, this one is almost as stupid as the last one, because this wasn't a prediction. They actually did a study in an area where acid rain was a problem, and the acid rain had killed all of the fish in a quarter of the lakes they looked at. Quoting an article from 538 here, studies showed that because of the increasing acidity of rainfall, nearly a quarter of the lakes and streams in the mountains had become uninhabitable by fish. The urgency of the problem prompted amendments to the Clean Air Act of 1990 and the creation of the world's first pollution market, a cap-and-trade program in which power companies were required to buy permits to emit sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, which cause acid rain. The result? Today, acid rain has all but disappeared from news headlines. So to be clear, this is another example where there was a problem and the government stepped in to do something about it. Okay, 13, 1988, regional droughts that never happened in the 1990s. So this one bothers me as well because the original prediction was for an increase in heat waves and droughts in the southeast and Midwest. So that's 4 predictions, 2 about droughts and 2 about heat waves. But they only respond to one of those 4 predictions, which is about droughts in the Midwest, and then they say that the whole thing is debunked. It's not. Heat waves did increase in both the Midwest and in the Southeast. Heat waves increased across the entire country. And here's the thing, from all the data I've looked at, it does seem that droughts decreased in the 90s in the Midwest. But this list doesn't even do the proper job of showing that. They just include one graph about only the upper Midwest, so not the entirety of the Midwest, just the upper Midwest. And just precipitation, not drought data, which exists. There is data on droughts. And you may think, of course, rain is going to directly correlate with drought, but that's not always the case because temperature increases can mean evaporation of water from the soil. My point is that they are just not good at data gathering in general. Number 14, 1988. Temperatures in DC will hit record highs. So the first sketchy thing about this is that they don't even use data from Washington, D.C., they use data from Lincoln, Virginia. The second sketchy thing is that the source they use for this graph is an anti-climate change website. And the third sketchy thing is that by every metric, D.C. has been getting hotter every single decade, and that includes the metric they use of the number of days each year where the temperature exceeds 90 degrees. This one is just a lie. 15. Maldives Islands will be underwater by 2018. It's true, the islands are still around. But this brings me to a larger problem I have with the list overall. I've seen this image all over the internet, but nobody ever links a source for the numbers he gives. So I don't know if this was informed by any actual data at the time. And that's a problem because this list is generally working to discredit climate predictions today that are backed up by countless studies. So if they want to say that current predictions are wrong because past predictions were wrong, they should be tackling the wider body of scientific data in the past, not sourceless newspaper clippings. 16, 1989, rising sea levels will obliterate nations if nothing done by 2000. Now, I do have to give Breitbart credit here because the source they use for this prediction lists the prediction as rising seas to obliterate nations by 2000. But that wasn't the prediction in the article, and Breitbart adjusted the phrasing to be accurate. So I'll give them credit where credit is due. The prediction wasn't that nations would be obliterated by 2000. The prediction was that if we didn't do anything substantial to address climate change by 2000, then we'd set ourselves up for inevitable sea level rise that would obliterate nations. I still do have an issue with this being listed as a failed climate prediction because the article doesn't give a timeline for its prediction, and many predictions of that sort say that the sea level rise will take decades, if not centuries, to manifest, so if this is one of those, then it hasn't been proven false yet. 17, 1989, New York City's West Side Highway underwater by 2019. It's not. So it turns out Bob Rice, the person speaking in this article, and James Hansen, the man he's quoting the prediction from, both later came out and said that this was a prediction made under the hypothetical scenario that CO2 doubled. And it's not like he was walking back his prediction. The Salon article was in 2001, and he released a book in 2001 that included the correct account. Funny how this list doesn't mention any of that. 18, 2000, children won't know what snow is. I really want to give this one to them because this was a prediction by a climate scientist and he was wrong, but let's not forget that Breitbart makes it seem like this is a prediction about all children when really it was a prediction about just children in Britain. So yeah, bad prediction, but also this list is misleading. 19, 2002, famine in 10 years if we don't give up eating fish, meat, and dairy. I suppose there's someone like this every generation because this guy is not a climate scientist and this prediction is not about climate change, it's about overpopulation.